Hi, everyone. I'm Devin Watley, and welcome to another episode of the On the Record podcast. I'm joined by weekend sports anchor reporter for KTIV TV, Amber Salas, former Daily Aztec alum, former SDSU alum, fellow friend. Amber, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me. This is so fun to catch up again.
Yeah, it's been a minute, but the last time you and I caught up, you've been a frequent friend of the podcast. This is your third time on the show, actually. So I think you're probably the most that you've ever been on here. But just talk us through like how your career's been so far, how things have been going since the last time we caught up. You moved from being a sports news MMJ to now solely being on sports on weekends. How has that whole journey been for you?
That's crazy. I can't believe that's the last time we did this because that was almost exactly a year ago. Because actually last weekend, I think, was like a full year of me doing sports full time. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, it's been good. It's crazy. I'm coming up on 2 years here in Sioux City, which that just seems crazy to me because at the time when I started, it seemed like that would take forever to go by. But 2 years goes by really fast, a lot faster than you think. But yeah, everything's been good. We're kind of getting into the thick of the fall sports season right now, which is super exciting. I'm sure, like everyone, we're super excited about football, a lot of high school football that I cover. And then we have 4 local colleges right here in our backyard on top of Iowa, Iowa State, and Nebraska. So it's about to be the busy time of the year, but it's the most fun time of the year. So super exciting.
So take me through what it's like to work in a market like that and just like what the sports culture is like there, because I can just imagine like initially, I think of a place like Sioux City. I'm like Midwest, like what goes on over there. But then it seems like based off of what you've been, writing in your stories and posting that like they take sports culture pretty seriously over there.
Yes, they definitely do. They don't do it like Siouxland, let me tell you. But honestly, that's a good point because I feel like for a lot of students maybe who want to do this, a lot of us have to start out in these small markets, of course. And sometimes when you hear of these places, that's literally probably the first thing that crosses your mind. You're like, I'm applying for a sports reporter job, but what the heck am I even going to cover? But I think that's the most important thing to do for you and your homework as you're maybe applying for these jobs or doing these interviews is when I looked up Sioux City covers a tri-state area. So we cover Iowa, parts of Nebraska, and parts of South Dakota because they all kind of intermix right at the corner where we are. So we're covering 3 state tournaments for high school from Iowa, Nebraska, South Dakota. It seems like every single time a state tournament rolls around, we have a state champion in almost all of those states, which is crazy. Very talented schools. But yeah, so right here in Sioux City, we have in Sioux City specifically, we have 2 colleges in the NAIA. So that's college football, college basketball. One of our football teams about 40 minutes away in Orange City won the NAIA National Championship, which was in North Carolina last December. And they sent me with the team to go cover that. So it's like, you never know, even if it's a small market, all of the opportunities it will bring you. And then on top of that, we have like a hockey team, the USHL, the Sioux City Musketeers. We have a semi-pro baseball team in the Sioux City Explorers that just clinched a playoff spot. So it's like we get a little bit of everything possible, which is really cool. And then on top of that, you never know what opportunity might come your way or what big person might come to Sioux City, Iowa. We've had a couple guys from our little small towns in Northwest Iowa make it to the NFL. A lot of them came back this summer and did a youth camp, and I got to talk to a bunch of them. So yeah, you never know. I always say sports is sports, and you're covering it, whether it's the NFL or whether it's a small NAIA college in the backyard, but it's been fun.
Yeah, I can imagine like just what's that whole experience like of covering these like NAIA teams, because I can imagine, obviously, being that you went to San Diego State, I mean, you saw how the sports culture is there and how people are very passionate about their teams. Is the energy kind of the same in that sort of in Sioux City down there?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess probably the biggest difference is that it's just a lot smaller stadiums and whatnot. But the cool thing is that the fans go all out. Like Northwestern is the team that won the NAIA national championship. And every Saturday that place was packed. And the cool thing is, since the stadiums are a lot smaller, it's more of an intimate feel, I guess, because the fans are kind of right there. It seems loud because they're right there, you know? But even like they care and they go all out too. Because even when we traveled to North Carolina for the national championship, obviously, you know that some diehard fans are going to go, but it's kind of like, oh, how well are they going to travel? That place was full of Northwestern fans that all traveled. And the cool thing was it was during December. So the weather was fine in North Carolina, but the weather in Iowa was not good when we left. I left with the team and we dodged a snowstorm, but a lot of the fans left a couple of days later. And like, that was kind of the fun thing. I was hearing stories from fans of, like I dodged canceled flights. I drove to Minneapolis to get on a flight. Like they were doing whatever they could to get there for that game, which was really cool. So yeah, I think the cool thing is that a lot of people that root for these teams are diehards who are born and raised here. Like maybe they went to Northwestern themselves too. There's a lot of history and tradition and legacy, and it's cool to see how many people still care even years later.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like when my dad and I went to Houston for the Final Four, and we went to the first game where San Diego State played FAU, and like, you know, you're going into like a 74,000 seat football stadium, and like that whole, you know, just seeing how many San Diego State fans are there in that for those two games, it kind of reminds me of that, because it's like, I guess you almost underestimate just the amount of passion and, you know, willingness that people have to support their teams regardless of wherever they are. And I feel like Sioux City kind of has the same kind of energy.
Definitely. And it's really cool too, even beyond, I guess, just the college level. We do a Coach's Corner show where I've kind of gotten to tell the deeper stories of a lot of our local coaches. And it's so special. Time after time again, almost everyone tells me the story of, oh, well, I used to play here. So it's so surreal for me. It's so full circle that now I'm back as the head coach. And I think that's so cool too, that like I said to the earlier point, people are born and raised here and they stay here and they get this head coaching job and they just want to pour back into people the way someone poured into them. And I think that's really cool. That's another thing with the Northwestern football team. Coach McCarty was also a player himself back in the day. So it's really cool just to see things like that come full circle.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, obviously you mentioned before about covering NAI teams and covering high school teams. Is there a part of that as a reporter that you really like compare, you know, because you've done this for a bit, you know how it's like. What's your sort of favorite part about doing that sort of thing where you're covering these high school and NAIA events in these smaller cities?
I think the coolest thing is that we have so much access. Obviously, regardless of where you go, people will hopefully respect your job as a reporter and give you the access that you need. But when you get to these bigger teams like someone like Alabama in college football or an NFL team, obviously there's a lot more guidelines you have to go through in terms of getting media access, whether it's like just a set designated press conference time and that's all you get, or whether it's going through an SID to try to set something up if you want to dive deeper. But obviously, like some of our schools still have SIDs, and obviously I still go through all of the steps. But the cool thing is that since they're a little bit smaller, I feel like we pretty much, most ideas that we've had, they're always on board and they're always like, yeah, what can we do to help you guys? So that's really cool. And I feel like because of that, I've gotten to really know a lot of these coaches and just people involved with the program. And that's building those relationships, you know, like now it's at the point where when I see them on the sidelines, it's like, hey, Amber, how's it going? Hey, coach, how's it going? You know, which that just helps you more with your coverage, no matter what it is, whether it's you're just running highlights or whether you're running an in-depth story, they think of you when these cool moments happen. yeah, it's just been, I think that's what's really special to me is the people that I've gotten to meet along the way. Or I think back to even a year ago when I first started covering football. When I first started doing sports full time as the weekend sports anchor and reporter, it was right at the start of football season. And I knew of some coaches' names, I knew of some of the teams, but I didn't know them like the way I do now because I wasn't covering them full time. And I think that's what's so special to look back now is like, it's almost like you view them as colleagues, you know, like I've gotten to know some of them. Some of them have shared deeper parts of their stories with me. And it's like, I appreciate that more than words. And it's really special what they've been able to accomplish and what we've been able to share about them along the way. And I think that's the coolest part always.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to take the listeners back a little bit because just to kind of give them a little bit of an idea of how your career path went. You went to San Diego State, you know, you worked in the sports section for the Daily Aztec for a few years. You got a internship at Fox Sports up in LA. You also spent some time up at KOSI as a high school football field producer. And then you got your job at KTIV as a sports news MMJ. This was your first on-air TV job. I can imagine, you know, you've been in it for a year now. Just, do you feel like the job has gotten easier for you in any sense, being that you've been in it for a year, or has it changed? Like, what are your sort of reflections now that you've been in this sort of role on air for TV for the past year?
Yeah, it's crazy to look back on. I think the biggest thing, I feel like I was prepared going in, thankfully, because of the Daily Aztec and San Diego State. Like I felt confident in how to put together a package. But of course, it's a learning curve of learning how to do it on all of our equipment and all of our software that we work on, new editing, new script writing, all of that type thing. But I think the biggest thing when I reflect back on, it's been, I think, a year and a half now, is just the confidence and how much I've grown, finding my voice. Like I watch pieces back from the beginning and I'm like, oh my gosh, who let me go on sounding like that? Like your voice is so much more high pitched, things like that. But, you know, right now I anchor Saturday, Sunday. Oh, I guess now with football season, I anchor Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. During basketball season, I'll anchor 4 days a week because we do Tuesday, Friday for basketball, and then I do Saturday, Sunday. So if you think about just doing it every day, getting the reps, you're getting better and better with each time, even if you don't see it in the moment. But when you look back on 6 months, it's so clear how much you've grown, you know? So I think that's the biggest thing, is just getting more comfortable and more confident in what you do, you know, with the reps. And then I think that confidence stems from, too, obviously I moved to an area I knew nothing about. Literally the first time I saw Sioux City was when I moved here. And of course, you can do the research on the teams that you'll be covering, but now it's like, I don't know everything. Obviously, we're not perfect, but it's like, I feel like I know most of these teams like the back of my hand, where that's where your confidence comes in, that, yeah, if they say go live right now in 5 minutes, I'm confident enough in keeping up with these teams where I could whip something up and be like, yeah, this is what's going on. This is the update, you know? But again, that goes back to developing those relationships and seeing these guys week in and week out. And yeah, it's been special.
Yeah, I know. I always think about that word you mentioned about repetition. And even for me as a producer, too, I can kind of say the same thing, because when I first started, I wasn't even producing more so I was just writing stories and editing stories in the rundown. But then, like, when I got into it, they threw me into the morning show for like a whole summer or whatever. And that was like, you know, you're getting exposed to like having to produce like a whole hour-long newscast, 30-minute newscast, which like listeners, and I want them to understand this too, like it's not easy. Even like doing, you know, your gig too, like it's not very easy, because you're having to basically get thrown into the fire and have to adjust on the fly. And, you know, I think that's kind of one of the beauties of this field, is like, you know, sometimes I think the field teaches you things you never expected you would learn about yourself.
Definitely. And I think the biggest thing, I love that you say that, time, beating the clock. I feel like when we were editing these packages in school or for the Daily Aztec, it's like, yeah, maybe you set a deadline for yourself of, yeah, I want this done by Friday, but you still have all the time in the world to work on it. Where here, like, oh my gosh, sometimes with even high school football games, like something goes long, you're an hour away, you're like, how am I going to get back? And the show's going live at 10, but you find a way. And I think that's the craziest thing too. Sometimes I'm like done with a day of work and I'm like, wow, we really did that, But that's the thrill of it. That's what makes it so fun, is no day is ever the same. You're up against the clock. You're like, okay, I've got a lot of stuff to do today, but how am I going to, it's like strategically thinking, how am I going to get this all done by 10 p.m. when the show goes live? But when you accomplish that, it's so satisfying. It's like, wow. And then it gives you the sense of like, I can do anything, like when you have a crazy day like that and make it in, it's really cool.
Yeah, I can totally attest to that because, here in San Diego and Southern California, we just had a tropical storm, which was like the first one ever to hit the state in like 84 years. And so you can imagine like everybody's just going like crazy with their tropical storm Hillary coverage and that sort of thing. And so just being in that moment, right, because these are all historic moments. And in that sort of space, it really gives you the opportunity to kind of just understand like, okay, if I can do this, anybody can do anything. And so that's really what it kind of taught me. But for you, like you got to experience something yesterday with Volleyball Day up in Nebraska. How historic was that, right? 90,000 people in there for the highest attended women's sports event ever in the entire world. Just completely insane. I was seeing it everywhere on social media. What was that experience like? I didn't know if you were there or not, or if you got a chance to experience that, but what was that just like, seeing all that stuff go down?
Yeah, I like still get the chills. I was there. It was the coolest thing. I don't even know if words can describe it. 92,003 people. Crazy. And the coolest thing, I was down right on the side of the court to film, which was really cool. But when I'm sure everyone saw the video of the tunnel walkout. That's something really cool that the Nebraska football team does. So it was really cool for volleyball to get to do it. And obviously, when they opened those doors, the crowd went insane. And it was almost like, I remember looking around, it's just a sea of red up the sides, like down. There's people on the court around. It's like literally a sea of people. And it's almost like you're looking at this crowd, you're like, this is like a Super Bowl type caliber crowd. Like they're loud, this place is packed, 92,003 people. We didn't even know it was 92,003 people at that time, but you knew it was probably going to be close to some record. And then they walk out and you're like, this is a college volleyball team. Like this is how big sports are in Nebraska. This is how much people care about women's sports here. That, I think, was the coolest thing to me. It was like, here's this insane crowd, and this is for college volleyball. This is growing the game. This is growing so many things. It was so cool. But it was really special because I don't know if you knew the story of the whole day. It was Nebraska volleyball is obviously a powerhouse, but they wanted to do a day to celebrate volleyball in the state of Nebraska. So before Nebraska's match, they also had an exhibition match with Wayne State College and Nebraska Kearney, which are two Division II schools, but they're kind of the powerhouses of Division II. Wayne State is in our coverage area, and I actually go down there a lot. I actually was down there like a week before Volleyball Day to check in with them on the season, and obviously we talked a lot about Volleyball Day and how excited they were. But that was so cool, too, to give these smaller D2 schools an opportunity that they probably never would have gotten playing on that big stage as well. So that was really special for me as well, because I got to be there for them and kind of cover their whole experience of this once in a lifetime opportunity for them. And then, of course, the big stage with Nebraska when they played, there was nothing like it. It was the coolest thing ever.
Like, what's going through your head in that moment as a reporter? Because I can imagine just like, at least I can kind of sense the anxiety that you'd probably have in that moment because there's so many people there and it's such a huge event and then milestone. But like, what's going through your head in that moment, just in a reporter sense?
it was chaos. They kind of had all of the reporters kneeling on the sides of the stage. So, but then once Nebraska started, there were like all these fans behind you too. So it's literally everyone's just like packed in there like sardines. It was kind of crazy. But to me, I knew the coverage plan. I knew what we were going to do. It kind of got hectic at the end, like we're talking about time, because I think around like 8:45 is when they announced the crowd. And then it's like, you want to get all that in for 10. And then it's like, you have an hour to kind of scramble and get everything going after the matches are over. But when it first started, for me, honestly, my thoughts, I was like, I need to just soak this all in. Like, this is one of the coolest things I've been able to cover probably. And just, yeah, lots of photos, lots of videos of how cool that crowd was and how loud they were. Coach John Cook walking by, and he just tears rolling down his face because of how much this means for women's sports and how much this means for volleyball. That was really cool. It's just soaking up the little moments like that where you're like, wow, this means a lot to people, and you get to be here to witness history. Like, it was, I still can't even believe that I was there and that happened. It was so cool.
Yeah, and it's crazy to me that they could draw 90,000 like that. I didn't even know that in Nebraska, let alone that it was that serious like that. I mean, was that something that kind of was that a surprise to you, or was that kind of expected, considering that you knew that they were kind of a powerhouse and that these other teams were powerhouses? Was that, what were your sort of reactions to that?
I knew it was going to be big because when they first announced Volleyball Day back in February, and when tickets went on sale, they sold out in, I believe it was 48 hours or something like that. And that was 90,000 tickets, I believe, or 87,000. It was something up there. But then they knew that they were going to open the floor, or like the tickets sold were the seats in the stadium. But they knew that there was the potential for there to be well over that because they were going to open the floor around the court for people to fill in. And that was another couple, however many people. So I feel like after everything instantly sold out, it was like, okay, this is going to be big. But yeah, Nebraska, it was funny. Scotty McCreery, the country singer, also performed a concert after, and I feel like he perfectly summed it up. He was like, they don't do it like they do it in Nebraska. And I feel like that's true. The fans, they care. They go all out. They're filling out, or they're selling out that stadium every home football game. But the cool thing is, you talk about volleyball. Volleyball is obviously a powerhouse, multiple national titles. They're ranked number 4 in the nation right now. They play at Devaney, and they'll sell out that place every time too. Now, obviously, that's only a couple thousand people, but people care about Nebraska volleyball. And I think that was part of why they did this too, is actually Wisconsin, who is one of their big rivals, had the NCAA record for attendance. And they were like, we want to beat that, but we want to go bigger than just that. We could set the US record, we could set the world record. And that's how the whole idea of, well, where's somewhere big enough for that? And that's where it was, oh, we could play at Memorial Stadium. So yeah, I knew there was a possibility, but when they announced it, they held up signs and it said 92,003. And that place just went crazy. Like, I will never forget that moment. Fireworks are going off. It was so cool.
What did you end up doing for the shows that night? Was it like kind of like a live hit from the field, or like was it, in studio? Like, what'd you guys kind of do in the shows after that?
Yeah, so I sent back. So yeah, we also had the Wayne State game, like I said earlier. I sent back kind of a look live package with highlights from that game and the post game reactions from players and coaches. That was really cool because, like I said, that one was an exhibition, but obviously still so cool. You're playing on the stage in front of these people. But Coach Kneifel, their head coach for Wayne State College, great line. He's like, I never thought the biggest game of my life would be an exhibition match in a football stadium. And then he just talked about what it it meant so much more because of what it means for the game and women's athletics and giving these girls a memory they'll never forget. That was really special. So it had that. And then, we did kind of a live hit around the attendance record, the Nebraska highlights, all of that. A lot of moving pieces, but it was so cool.
Yeah, I mean, I bet you to just be a part of an experience like that, especially like early in your reporting career too, is like just a magical moment. And, like we mentioned in your reporting career, you've done news, you've done sports. Have there been any like crazier experiences that you've had in that time you've been at KTIV that come to mind outside of just the volleyball day in Nebraska?
There's so many. There's so much has happened. Volleyball Day in Nebraska is definitely up there. The NAIA Football National Championship with Northwestern was really cool and really special for me too, because I obviously love football. But that was cool because I traveled with them. I think I was there for 5 days leading up to the game. So it was cool. That one was just a lot of storytelling of like, what is the story of this team? How did they get here? What makes them unique? Because, for 5 days, you can't just talk about, oh, yeah, they're good. They're playing in the football national championship, but that's not till Saturday, like it was really special. Just like I said, to get to know more of the guys, for them to open up and share their stories. So I think that was really special as someone who loves that storytelling aspect and has goals and dreams to maybe be a sideline reporter or something like that one day. I feel like that was more what I was doing on that trip was, okay, what's something unique about today that all the viewers at home would be interested about that they wouldn't know because they're not here, so that was really special. And then I just think about like, sometimes it's even the high school football or high school sports state tournaments and the teams that win state titles and the teams that come from behind and are kind of the underdog. And you get to just watch. If you think back to high school, I don't know if you played any sports in high school, but for me at the time, a state tournament would have been the biggest deal when you're a high school athlete. So sometimes it's really fun for me just to feel their excitement. Like, they win a state title and it's like, that's the best day of their life, and they're just high schoolers having fun out there. So, and a lot of them are really good and go on. I guess that's the other cool thing too. Like, one of our football teams, Central Lyon, George Little Rock, they have 3 guys going off to Iowa next year to play football. So that's the cool thing is, even though they're small towns in Iowa, they're going off to the big stage and doing cool things after high school sports too. So those are probably moments that are up there for me.
That's awesome. Has your perception of, because I can imagine, going from San Clemente in California and that type of thing to the Midwest, it was kind of like a whoa kind of moment. For you, has your perception on just Sioux City in general, is that like in that whole area and just sports and that culture, has it changed ever since you've been working there?
Oh, definitely. 1000%. It's funny. Obviously the nature of the business, you're only in places for a couple years at a time, if that's what you choose. But I'm starting to think about what I might be doing next. But it's crazy because in the beginning, like I said, it was almost like, how long do I have to be here? Like, get me out of here. But you're just uncomfortable. You don't know anyone. You don't know the area. But now it's crazy because I think about leaving and it makes me sad. I'm like, I don't want to leave. I've gotten comfortable here. I have my routine now. I have really good friends, both from work and outside of work. I know the lay of the land. I know my fun things I like to go do. And it's a really special community. The people here are so nice. Like I said, it's high school football season right now. We're going to a lot of games on Friday nights. I just walk down the sidelines and people are like, hey, Amber, how's it going? And some of them I know, some of them I've never seen in my life. But it's just, that's how special this community is, that people aren't afraid to just walk up and strike a conversation with you. And it'll be some of the best conversations of your life because people are just so sweet and down to earth. And it's been really special for me. And I will forever cherish this time in my life and be so glad that I took a wild leap of faith to go to Sioux City, Iowa.
Yeah, it's like I remember when you were like texting me, like when you first were considering the job and you were like unsure of it, and I was like, "This is your dream, like you got to shoot for this. Like, what are you talking about?" It's funny to kind of reflect on that now and all that stuff, and you mentioned that idea of like people, growing obviously involves leaving, and a lot of the I think commonality with this field is that there's a lot of turnover, right? I mean, there's been a lot of turnover, whether that's in producer side, whether that's in reporter side. You see people going up to bigger markets. You see people going to different roles, whether that's in news or outside of news. What are your sort of thoughts on like the whole idea of the business, of that business and the side of it, and just like the fact that people can chase, people chase their dreams and that sort of thing, and leaving for bigger opportunities? Like, how important is that, especially for people like just entering out of college into the journalism field, or people looking to get a start a job and get onto the big market right away? How important is just understanding that idea of growth and being able to know when it is the right time to find your spot?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's hard because we're seeing nowadays so much has changed where people do start in bigger markets. Like that's not uncommon these days. Whereas in the past, it's like that would never happen. You would start at the bottom and work your way back type thing. So I think at the end of the day, the biggest point is your journey is your journey. Whatever opportunity comes up for you and whatever opportunity feels right for you is going to be different than the person next to you. And that's totally okay. I would say from my perspective, I will always shout from the rooftops how important the small markets are, because there's no words to even describe how much I've grown, not just as a reporter and an anchor and a sports person, but just as a person, like picking up my life. This was, my family's from San Clemente, California, which was only an hour away from San Diego State. So although I left and went away to college, I still had the safety of home was an hour away if I ever needed anything, This was the first time in my life that I'm thousands of miles away. I am on my own. I have to figure it out myself. But the personal growth I've experienced from that too has been so also special to reflect back on. But yeah, I think in the small markets, you have the opportunity to really let your creativity flow. If you're in a place that supports you, that's important too. Good management, we'll shout that from the rooftops too. But if you're in a place that supports you in your growth, they should always be on board for whatever ideas you have. And that's what's been really cool for me. I do a Coach's Corner segment every Sunday where I'm doing more of a sit down feature type interview with our local coaches. Like I said, sometimes when you get to these bigger places, you don't have the access like that. But this opportunity has allowed me to really dive into that more in-depth interviewing. Like, what is their story? How do I find this? How do I make it different every Sunday and not ask the same types of questions? Those are special things for me and how I've grown, where it's like, if you start off in a bigger market, are you going to have an opportunity like that? Our coach is going to be as available, so it's little things like that where you have the opportunity to do things that are really special that will help you grow to then get to wherever you want to go. I also would add though that if you go to a small market and you love it, it's okay to stay there. That's been the cool thing for me at my station too. There's a lot of for lifers at my station. Like our chief meteorologist has been here 35 plus years. Our main anchor has been here 30 plus years. And granted, they're all from the Siouxland area, but I think that's special. Like, you don't have to chase the markets if that's not what you want to do. If you're happy here and this is, you have a family there, or, you meet someone, whatever it is, you want to start your family there, that's totally fine too. And there's still opportunities for you to grow, even if it's a small market. I think that's what's obviously, I don't know if that's the route for me, But I think that was something that I didn't really realize before, because in my mind, it was always about, all right, like this is part of the journey. We're going to get to where we want to go next. But when I've met some of these people at my station that have been doing this for so long and are so talented, and they're like, yeah, I love it here. Like, I want to stay here forever. That's really special too. And the community sees that and loves it, because for 30 plus years, they turn on their TV and they've had the comfort of these people and they feel like they've gotten to know them too. So that's also a really special aspect of it.
Yeah, I can't stress that point you mentioned enough about good management and spurring that creativity, right? Like, I think if you're in a place that has management that's willing to support your ideas, but you also have to make sure that they know what you want to do too, because they're not going to try and ask you and, bug you constantly to understand, okay, what is this? What does he want to do? What does Amber want to do? What does Devin want to do? Like, you have to make sure that you let your intentions be known, because they will put you in the right place and put you where you want to go if you let them know what you want to do. I think that's the key thing here is, at the end of the day, it falls on your shoulders to be able to say, if you want to go do this, they have to, know that. Let them know that. Let your intentions be known to them.
Definitely. And if you think about it, they have a lot going on too. They have a lot of people they're keeping track of. They have everything else that they're doing in their own duties as GM or news director, a lot of things going on. So yeah, I think that's a really important point too, is to not be afraid to have those conversations, even if it's, hey, I have this idea. I don't know where to start. I don't know how fast we get there, but I would love any tips or input you have of how we might be able to start to get this going. Then it at least puts the idea in their head of, oh, like, that's cool. Okay, like, who can we talk to, or who do we know? What do we need to do? Then it's on everyone's minds, and you're able to get one step closer to maybe bringing that goal or idea to life.
And you mentioned the for lifers, and I'm like, I think about that at NBC7 too, because we have so many people who've been there for like decades, and it's funny because it's like you mentioned, the people that see them on TV for like 30 years or whatever, and it's like they're like almost mainstays in their home, right? Like a member of their family almost, in a sense. And yeah, you kind of get that same sort of sentiment working at NBC too, because it's like Catherine Garcia and Mark Mullen, who are our main night anchors at 6 and 11. It's like people have known them for years. Like, people will stop by, stop at like a store or whatever, and recognize them. Oh, hey, how's it going? So it's crazy to just kind of see that, like, as a producer, because you're working with them. And it's like, these are just like, your regular coworkers. Like, these are not, in that same sort of status. So it's almost like it kind of, that their sort of reputation kind of almost puts more on you to want to be able to raise your level and raise your sort of ethic, your work ethic, to a higher level, because you're working with so many good people.
Definitely. I think, yeah, like I said too, I think it's so special because, like you said, people that have watched them for so long, it shows that they care. It shows that they care about this community. They care about bringing you the best news possible. And I think at the end of the day, what every TV station is trying to do is to get you to trust them, trust our reporting, trust that we are working hard to give you the most accurate, up-to-date information. And when you have people like that, it's like, that's how you develop that trust. You've been doing this 30 plus years and we've been watching you every day. That's so cool. So.
Yeah, for sure. And you obviously working sports on a weekend, you're dealt with a lot of different challenges that they're obviously different than sports during the week. And you mentioned that whole idea of channeling creativity. And you mentioned that with Coach's Corner and things like that. How do you sort of channel into your sort of creative sense when you're working these weekend shifts? Because I can imagine, like, there's times where there may be a lot going on. There's times where there may not be anything going on. How do you sort of challenge that?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because now that football season started, there probably won't be a calm weekend until the end of basketball season. This is like the most hectic time of the year. But it's funny that you say that. There's sometimes everything going on and then there's sometimes nothing going on, because quite literally, maybe like 3 weeks ago, there was actually nothing going on. We call it like the dead period between like when all of the summer sports ends. Because actually, crazy enough, in Iowa, we have a summer sports season for high school. They play high school softball and high school baseball during the summer, which is kind of crazy. That's definitely not how they do it in California. That threw me for a loop. But so that keeps us busy a lot through the summer. And then, like I said, we have that semi-pro baseball team that plays through the summer. But right before school starts again, there's like a 2-week dead period where there's absolutely nothing going on. And it's moments like that where it's like, okay, what am I going to do? My biggest thing, there's always the opportunity. There's MLB going on right now. We have a lot of teams people care about, like the Cubs and the Twins. And I could easily pull down highlights of that, right? And people would care. But my thing is, how I always challenge myself is, how can I make this local? Like, sure, anyone can look up those Twins highlights on Twitter or their phone, and I can show them the same thing on TV, right? But like, I like to challenge myself to think outside of the box and not go the easy route. And sometimes it's a lot of thinking ahead. Like maybe there's something that happens earlier in the week, like a media opportunity where you can interview someone. Maybe it's high school, maybe it's a local team, but it's like, okay, what can I ask that I can save that will still be relevant come Saturday, Sunday? So I did a lot of that to, yeah, sure, like that team might not be playing today, but here's a local element of something they said or something they're working on. And I kind of try to wrap it around like maybe a VOSOT, but more like a feature unique type thing. Like, I'm trying to think. During basketball, this is a fun one, for example, but it's ways like this, like how can you always be thinking outside the box? One of our local high school basketball teams won a state title. Obviously, that's exciting. After that, there's a little bit of a dead period too. But the basketball coach had these very specific shoes that he wore on game day and was superstitious about. And they were like Nike Dunks, but they were customized to the school colors, purple and gold. They looked so cool. But so after they won, I just kind of for fun asked him about it. I'm like, Coach, like, tell me about your shoes. Like, why do you wear them every game day? And there was a way deeper meaning behind it. He was like, well, like, I love shoes. My wife got them for me, but then I wore them and we won. And then I was like, I can never wear them again. And he's like, they're my game day shoes. I have this whole routine. Like they stay in the box. They only go on the hardwood. And it's like, that's just fun. Like people would hear that and they would care. Maybe they laugh, maybe they smile, but it's like, that's a local element instead of showing something national that people don't have as much of a connection to, like the way some people might know this coach from their hometown. So stuff like that, it's like, okay, I have an opportunity to interview someone. How could I grab something and hold something that will still be relevant and might make people smile, laugh, or be like, that's interesting. So that's what I always try to do.
Yeah, I think it's funny because like I kind of learned that same lesson working sports rap for the first time last year, because in that sort of lane, like they're having to do football season. We obviously have Sunday Night Football on NBC, which is like a big freaking deal because that takes in a lot of viewers. And then after that, we have the football night in San Diego post game show, which obviously is a big one of the major shows, probably one of the biggest shows that NBC7 has out of all of its newscasts. But doing sports rap, it's always interesting because Darnay Tripp, who is the sports anchor at NBC7, he taught me this idea and it's kind of stuck with me. Like he's always telling me, what can you do beyond just normal sports highlights? Like people, if they want to, like you said, if they want to go see the highlights, go look it up on Twitter, look it up on YouTube. So it's like, what sort of ways can you tell a story in a different fashion than what hasn't been told already? So I always kind of try to chase that. And I feel like for me, it not only applies to sports rap, but it also applies to my newscast too. Like, that's kind of one of the things that we've been emphasizing a lot is like, there's always a story beyond the story. It's just a matter of like being able to find it and tell it in a different way, whether that's like putting the anchors in a different spot, having a different sort of element to a show. Like the other day, we found out that Loyal are going to be ending their season. Loyal's a USL soccer team. So it's like, okay, we ran a VO on it and then had, Darnay do something in sports, but it's like for the 11, why don't we just have Darnay do like a little crosstalk with the anchors, that type of thing. So, there's always sort of different ways to push your creativity and ways to push your boundaries. And I feel like that's one of the biggest things that a lot of people in college almost kind of they're learning how to do that. I feel like you don't really get the experience right away of learning how to do that, like because of obviously the deadlines and the environment's different. But I think that's one of the biggest adjustments that a lot of young journalists need to make, because it's like the more that you learn to do that, the better you're going to end up being.
Definitely. I will shout that from the rooftops forever. I think it's hard too, especially in the small markets. We don't have as many resources. Like my sports department is 2 people. It's me on the weekend and Jason is my coworker. He's the weekday sports anchor. Obviously, like for high school football and whatnot, we have other shooters that help us out. We have some like sports/news hybrid MMJs, but it's like we don't get them every day, you know? So it can be easy to fall into just the comfort of, well, we don't have people, we don't have help. We just got to do what we got to do to get the show on the air. We just got to get highlights. Let's fill it with highlights. And it's like, unfortunately, some days that's how it goes. If it's only me, it's like, well, I can only do so much, you know? But I always try, even in those moments, the forefront at my mind is people, even if it's a state championship game, even if it's the biggest game of the year, people are never going to remember the score. They're not going to remember the highlights come even maybe 2 months from now, but they will never forget a story that you tell them that of something special that happened that day. For example, at our high school football state championships last year, we had a team go undefeated. They were so good. They win the state title. Everyone loves them. But I was on the field pregame and saw this special moment go down of the team gifting this little kid a necklace and everyone's crying. And I was like, what's going on here? Turns out one of the football players' grandfather who played at the school, they called him their biggest fan. He never missed a game, had passed away unexpectedly right before the playoffs began. And I guess all the senior boys were really close with this kid's grandfather, and they're like, we're going to play for him. So I did a really special story after the state tournament just on his memory and how much he meant to the community and why this team was playing for him. I still have people that will stop me when I go to Remsen St. Mary's that are like, man, that was so special. And it just truly encompassed what that win meant for everyone, because it was more than just the win. And it's like, case in point, they probably don't even remember the score of that game, even though they won and they were undefeated and it was so cool. Give them something that they'll never forget. Storytelling always tops the highlights. That's my TED Talk.
Exactly. I cannot even stress that enough. You hit that point to a T. With your whole sports anchor gig, take me through what it's like being in the day-to-day duty. Like, as soon as you pull up to the studio for your shift, what do you do from there?
Okay, so, oh my gosh, I don't even know where to start. The crazy thing is every day is different. Okay, so I'll do like a high school football Friday right now. So we do Sports Force Extra. So Friday night at 10, we do a 20-minute broadcast of all high school football. So that's the focus every Friday night. So normally I'll come in at 2, we do our newsroom meeting with everyone, kind of break down our plan, what sports is planning on doing, what everyone else is planning on doing. And then it's kind of getting everything ready for the 6. And in the 6, we'll do 4 live shots at the games that we're at. And then Jason, our weekday guy, will be in the studio anchoring. And we're kind of previewing what's going to be happening, what's coming up tonight at 10 on Sports Force Extra. A lot of the times we'll do pregame interviews with coaches. And again, that's the fun aspect of just the access that you have with it just being high school football, is just being able to go up and talk to them. So yeah, I'll come in at 2, know what games I'm going to, and kind of start putting together a preview, pulling video to put together like a VO, get in contact with the coaches, let them know we're coming, see what time they might be available. Then it's getting out there, doing the interview, sending it back from the field. And then we'll go live at 6, get that under the way, done by like 6:30. Then you're getting ready for kickoff, get highlights from that game. Most of the time, I probably go to about 2 games. So it's like you got to perfectly time it where you get enough highlights at one place with being able to get to the next place with enough time. Then it's come back, edit up both my games, get ready, and go anchor. It's very chaotic on Friday because normally there's like just enough time in the day to get everything done and you're running out there, but it's so fun. And then like on Saturday, Sunday, I also anchor. Saturday is about to be all about college football. But thankfully, I will have help from another one of our hybrids on Saturday. So normally, like I said, we have like 4 local teams that we'll cover every week if they're all at home. So I'll probably grab the 2 college games in San Diego. Our other person will get the ones that are a little bit further away. But yeah, then it's like we share a lot with our sister stations. So they'll send me all the stuff from like Iowa, Iowa State, and Nebraska football games. We got to throw that into. We're talking like a 6-minute sports block on Saturday just for college football, which is really fun. But again, that's the special thing. Again, a station that supports you. My station and management knows that on the weekends and on Friday nights, people care about football. That's what they want to see. So it's really cool because they're okay with, yeah, we'll float the news story if sports wants more because that's what people really want to see right now. And I think, again, that support is really important. Obviously, we know news is working hard to get their stuff too, but it's finding that balance between like, okay, what do they need to run and what do we need to run and how can we make it all work? So yeah, during the week, I guess, if you want that part too, it's a little more mellow because Jason will be anchoring. And a lot of the times I'm working on more of our feature stuff. Like every Wednesday, we do what we call is the Sports Force Champion. And the whole point of this story is the story beyond the sport. It's like finding a coach or a player or a trainer, anyone involved in the game, and kind of telling their story beyond just them being a really good player or whatever they are. So I'll work on a lot of stuff like that during the week. And yeah, if there's a couple high school volleyball games during the beginning of the week, grab some of those too. But truly no day is ever the same, but that's what makes it so fun.
Yeah, there was a Sports Force Championship story that you just did the other day. I think it was on Tammy Veerbeek. I think that I watched and it was really nice. I was like, wow, like, you never think about like these NAIA schools having like these coaches that have been there for decades, right? Doing all this winning and stuff like that. And it's like to see something like that is just so cool. And how she was like considering retirement, but then she still had this like passion and love for the game that she couldn't leave. Like just those whole those stories, I think to me are so cool because it's like you get to understand people beyond just the game. Cause I feel like there's so much more to it.
Definitely. And again, I guess tips for younger ones or whoever it might be. Stories like that come about, or I guess, you're at these games, obviously, you're getting the highlights, but the biggest thing is paying attention to the details. Like, what is going on? What are you observing? Those little things that I observed during pregame or things like that, or something that happened with a fan in the stands, or example, that football story where I saw them hugging the boy and people are crying and they're giving them this dog tag necklace. It's like, be curious. Don't just watch that and be like, like that's weird. I wonder what that is. Like, no, go up there and ask because those are how those stories come about. You talk about Tammy and considering retirement. They won the state title. She talked about it. It was just this thriller. It was her 13th state title. It's like, all right, like, it's never going to top that because this game was unreal. It was 2 rivals. They'd go back and forth in high school volleyball to 5 sets, and it literally went to the 25th set. Like, it was insane. But just, you could see her reaction. You could see her emotions on this meant more. And she even kind of talked about that after, like, I don't know what I'm going to do yet. I really need to think a lot about this now. But it's remembering those moments and remembering how she looked on the sideline and how she was hugging her girls that it's like, okay, this means a lot right now. Like, what was the process to get you back here today? So always observe. That's how the best things come about.
For sure. And I wanted to also mention too, like not just about observing and all these other things too, but now I wanted to get into your whole, living in Sioux City, that sort of thing, like just a little bit of a lighter questions as we near towards the end here. Comparing to San Clemente and, moving to the Midwest, what's your favorite thing and your least favorite thing about Sioux City and just the Midwest in general and that whole space?
That's so hard. My favorite thing, we have a cool little downtown area. We call it Historic 4th Street. And it's really fun during the summer because it's obviously get fairly nice weather. I mean, there's been a couple weeks where it's been pretty hot and humid where it's almost like miserable to be outside. But for the most part, I feel like it's pretty nice, like in the 80s with the breeze going. It's like perfect summer weather, right? And so that downtown area is really nice just for going out and about, like maybe going to lunch or dinner at some of the restaurants down there. But like they have cool patios and things like that where you really can just enjoy being outside. Like there's like some rooftop bars for like appetizers and things like that are just like cool little environment. There's some cool stuff on that downtown area, which is always fun to walk around. And then we have the river that goes right through downtown Sioux City as well. And there's like a cool little walk along the side. So like, I don't know, during the summer, I've really enjoyed just enjoying being outside, whether it's going for a walk down that river trail, or we have like this one park called Bacon Creek Park, and there's a lake with a little trail around it as well. So I've really been enjoying fun things like that during the summer. But the bad part is the winter because it gets so cold or it's snowing. And then that's the challenge is, okay, now I can't do fun things outside. So it's like, how do you keep yourself entertained without being able to leave the house? So I don't know, I guess. That sounds dramatic. There's still things that you can do. It's not like the world shuts down when it snows, but it's more difficult because obviously you don't want to be outside that long because it's really cold out there. And then it's like you got to put on all of your layers and your jackets and all that stuff. But
yeah,
it's fun. You find a way.
Yeah, I bet. When you were mentioning the snow, I bet I was like, when you went to Houston for the Final Four, I'm like, oh man, I bet you the weather difference must have been. I don't know if it was snowing at the time. Obviously,
Yes.
I don't think so. But what was it? I bet the weather difference must have been so much fun.
It's crazy because April is supposed to be spring. And on April 1st, it literally snowed. And we were like, this is a sick April Fool's joke because it shouldn't be snowing anymore. So yeah, April 1st. And then I think April 3rd is when the Final Four was, or the championship, right? I think maybe something like that.
Championship, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I quite literally escaped the cold and the snow when I went to Houston, and it was great.
Yeah, and on that topic, real quick about the Final Four. I mean, we got to reconnect at the championship game. I think we haven't, it's been a minute since we last seen each other. But, what was it like for you to just be there? Because I can imagine, like, you've been to San Diego State games before. I mean, you've been through that whole thing. Like to just be in that sort of experience where you're watching the final college basketball game, like and they always say the road ends here, right? And you're seeing all that stuff inside a 70,000 seat football stadium. Like, what was that whole experience like for you?
It was so crazy. That was the coolest day ever. Even though the outcome wasn't what we wanted, it was so cool. And it was so cool. I feel like it was even more special for all of us who were there and experienced the COVID year 2020 with Malachi Flynn, Jordan Shackle, Matt Mitchell, all those guys, because that's what could have been, and we were covering this team and we knew, but the world didn't really know because no one got to see San Diego State because obviously COVID canceled everything. We don't want to talk about it, but I feel like it was so special because all those people who knew that and knew that year could have been special finally got to see it all come to life and see San Diego State be on the big stage that I feel that they really deserve to be on. So that was so cool. It was also just the whole experience of getting there for me was unreal. So I will never forget when they beat Creighton to go to the Final Four. I was actually working And it was like, I might as well not have been working because I was so focused on that game. And it was so fun because throughout the whole March Madness, I got everyone at my station so hooked on San Diego State because I would be going crazy in the newsroom. So everyone's watching this Creighton game with me and we're like, oh my gosh. And so obviously next is the Final Four. I'm like, okay, well, we got to go. Well, I could not go to that Final Four game against FAU because I actually was nominated for an award that my station sent me to, which was in Minneapolis, which was on April 1st, the day of the Final Four. So I knew I couldn't do that, but I was like, if they win, I'm going to the national championship. So it was so funny. I will never forget. I was at a story. I looked up flights. I called my dad. It was all going to work out. This is before the Final Four even happened. It's like there's no guarantee that they're going to the national championship, but I'm just banking that they are. So I called my dad. He's like, yeah, I think we can go. And I was like, okay. So the next thing was getting it approved through work. So I walked back into my boss and I was like, listen, I am a diehard San Diego State fan. You know this. I cheered for them. I have the opportunity to maybe go to the national championship if they win. Like, how can we make this work? Because come that day, I will not be here. And she was so funny. She laughed at me. She's like, Amber, you don't even have to ask. We'll move it around. We'll make it work. So it's cool. She just gave me those 2 days off as like my normal 2 days off during the week. So I didn't even have to add more PTO or anything. But so then it was like, okay, so I've got everything approved. I've got the flight, but now they need to win the Final Four game to go. So that game was during the ceremony for this awards banquet that we were at. And I was with our production manager and our web manager. And you know how these awards things go. Everyone's dressed up. It's a nice dinner. I watched the first half and they went into halftime down. And I was like, oh no. But then we had to go to the ceremony and I was like, okay, I'm not going to watch and I'm going to look at the score and they're going to win. And I'm not going to deal with it. So we're going in for the dinner and I look at my phone and there's like 4 minutes left and San Diego State is like slowly creeping back in. And I'm like, okay. So I'm like looking at the score and then we sit down, they start serving this like nice dinner. And I turned to our production manager. I'm like, Keith, I have to watch this. Like, can I please watch it? And he was like, I don't care. So I have like the live stream on my phone, like under the table. And like then my stream like started glitching and it was so funny because suddenly everyone at this table cares just as much about San Diego State as me. And Keith, our production manager, he's like, I got it on my phone and like he's watching it. And that's when the buzzer beater happened. And we all just are losing our minds. Like we have like the phones under the table. We're all like, oh my gosh. Like, and everyone in this ceremony is like, what is going on? I mean, it wasn't that dramatic, but everyone was kind of like, huh? And we were like, sorry, like San Diego State won. It's fine. But so that was so special. I will never forget that. Obviously, it was such a special day for me because that story ended up winning an award. But I will never forget just everything that went down that day and how like all my coworkers cared just as much. And that got us to the national championship.
That was awesome. Wow. What a crazy story.
I don't know if you saw them because I think I posted them on my Instagram and even Twitter. But they took a picture of me and I'm like holding the stream and it's all blurry and I'm just like, ah.
I know. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And it's crazy. Like for me, I was watching their I think let me see. I was watching their watch party when they played Creighton in the Elite Eight. And they had watch parties at Viejas Arena. And so I was watching the game, and I'm sitting with like a ton of other San Diego State fans. It's like maybe like 6,000 there. And that whole game was nerve wracking alone. And then, right, they hit the free throws to win.
Yeah.
And then it's crazy because as soon as that game ended, right, the refs, make the decision. People are storming the court. Like I'm going crazy, just losing it. Like it was wild. And like, I'm calling my dad like, oh my God, they made it. They made it. Cause my dad and I, we've been season ticket holders since like 2010. So like I've followed the team since I was a kid. Like this is, been something I grew up with since I was young. And so it's like, oh my God, just to see them go to the Final Four. That's something you think about, but it's like, once it actually set in, we were like, holy crap, like San Diego State going to the Final Four. Like it was crazy. And then we were like, we got to find a way to get there. And so I talked to my boss, and I was like, and it was funny because San Diego State was selling tickets for their section for the Final Four games, and there wasn't a guarantee that you were going to get it, regardless of if you were a season ticket holder or not, because you had to, they based off of a priority rewards point system type of thing. And so if you had more points, then you increased your chances of getting the Final Four tickets. And so, I didn't have the tickets, but I told my boss, like, yeah, like my dad and I got tickets. Can I get this day off? So then we could go to the Final Four. And so I got the weekend off, and then I think we were able to get that situated. And then, it was, we were trying to find flights. We couldn't find any flights out of here because they were all gone. And so we took like a 8 a.m. flight out of LAX, and I had to do the 11 p.m. on Friday. And so, I did the 11 p.m., got home at midnight, slept for like maybe 2, 3 hours, 4 hours, drove up at 3 a.m. to LAX, and flew out at 8:30 to go to Houston.
I think that's the coolest thing. Like, those are the memories that we'll never forget about the Final Four and that whole experience. And even like, I flew out of Omaha, and like, I saw some random person in Omaha that was going to the national championship. She had a San Diego State sweatshirt on, and we're in the TSA line. She's like, "Go Aztecs!" And it's like, this is so cool. Like, the nation is rooting for San Diego State right now, which was so cool. And I think also the most special part was, like we were talking about earlier, San Diego State showed out at the national championship. There were so many people there, and it was so cool. Like you said, like, obviously we knew each other were going, so we were obviously able to catch up, but it was also so cool. The people that I didn't know were going, or like that you just don't keep in touch with every day, like the way we do, like whether it was someone from class that you were just kind of acquaintances with. I saw so many people like that where it was just like, hey, like, how's it going? What are you up to? And it's just like, the San Diego State community was so special that day, and I loved it. It was awesome.
Yeah, and it was just a crazy experience. And even being there in person for the game winner, like, that was one of the things, like,
I can't even imagine. Too. That's like, so cool.
Like, yeah, like, because you're sitting there, and it's funny because my seats are like they were on this edge or whatever, like near where the team tunnel was at. And so, like, the court's kind of small from your perspective, because obviously it's a football stadium, it's a wide seating area. And so, the court looks kind of small. So you're having to like kind of squint or look like pretty far to actually focus and kind of see everything. And it was funny because I was just thinking in my head, like, man, they can't lose. Like, I took all this time off for the whole trip. Like, they got to win. Like, I was like, man, I really didn't want them to lose. And then I was joking with my dad, like, yeah, I think they're gonna hit a game winner right here. Like, I was saying it before in the timeout before they got the block, and then they get the block, and then Lamont's dribbling down the court, and everybody's yelling like, shoot it, shoot it, shoot it, like everybody's screaming, shoot it, like shoot the ball, and then he puts it up, and then like the moment he hit it, everybody just like absolutely lost it. I mean, I'm telling you, I was crying, my dad was crying, everybody's crying. Like, that was probably one of the top 5, like, top, maybe even number 1 sports moment I've had in my life, just being there for that. I mean, because it's like, you see your team hit a game winner to go to the national championship game. Like, it's insane, just so insane cool. In person. So cool. Like, I love it. Yeah. It's just wild. Just a wild experience. I'm glad we all got to see that, because I told people, I'm like, I don't know when San Diego State's going to be back here again. It's never promised. Tomorrow's never promised. So I always say too, even though obviously the national championship didn't turn out the way everyone wanted to, for me, I'll never forget in the second half when they got it to like 4 or 5 points. They went on that little run. Yeah. You remember that? Like, yeah. My dad and I were going crazy. It's like, you had that one little, because this is what they do. They would get down, they would somehow crawl their way back, and we're going to hit a buzzer beater. We're going to hit some insane shot. So just that little bit of that adrenaline rush, like, that was all I needed for the national championship. Like that. And again, the way the stadium was going crazy, like my dad and I are like hugging each other. We're like, here we go. Like, and then like you could just see all the red going crazy. And it was like, okay. Obviously sad ending, but that little bit of the crowd rush was pretty cool. Yeah, and it was crazy too, because after the FAU game, it's like I go out in the concourse, because what's funny is my phone died before the game, and so I was trying to I couldn't get it on video, the game winner, like, which is what kind of, it's one thing I'll think about like forever probably, but yeah, I went to go charge my phone. Enjoy the moment rent free in your head. Yeah, yeah, and it's funny because I went to go charge my phone out in the concourse, and like you're seeing all these people, these San Diego State fans, just rushing out, like high fiving each other, hugging each other, and these are people that don't know each other. That's what made it even
Yeah.
crazier. Like
So
these are
cool.
random people. Like it was insane. Like people are dapping me up. Miami fans were saying
Yeah.
congrats. Like I don't even know who these people are. Like it
Yeah.
was just like that. That's what makes college basketball so much fun, or college basketball so much fun, and just sports in general. Like just moments like that, man. Like that's what really I think I just learned a lot from that moment. Was just like sports is amazing, so
Definitely. Love it.
yeah, for sure, for sure. So before we close things off, Amber, I wanted to ask you one final question for the listeners here. A lot of them want to know their biggest piece of advice. What's your biggest piece of advice to young journalists right now, knowing that you've been through what you've been through? What's your biggest piece of advice for them as they head into the field?
Man, there's so much. I would say the biggest thing, you come out of college and you're looking for your first opportunity, and it's scary. Like it's scary on the fact that you don't really maybe know exactly what you want to do or what route you want to take, or maybe it's, you want to be on air, but you've grown up in one place your whole life, and it's like, oh my gosh, I have to move to this place I've never been. I think my biggest piece of advice would be to take that leap of faith and go all in. And the important part is to go all in, because yeah, like you take the leap of faith and you get here and, you just kind of settle and don't make the most of the opportunity. Like go all in and get out of this opportunity what you want out of it. Like we said, talking to your managers or bosses about the goals and dreams you have and what you're hoping to accomplish here. Whether that's when you first get to your station, you're like, hey, like my goal here is I want to grow. Maybe it's, like I want to make it back to LA one day. That's the market I want to work in. Don't be afraid to say that. Like, hey, like I know I have a long process before I get there. I know I'm just getting started, but like, these are my goals. Like, what can I do in these next 2 years to help me get there? Things like that. So yeah, I would just say go all in. And like we said earlier, this will always be my biggest thing, especially for people who want to do sports. What can you do that's more than just the highlights? And if you can learn how to do that now in a small market where, like we said, you have you have the access to these coaches and you have the opportunity to do these cool, unique things, go all in, because then you develop that skill and it becomes easier and easier for you to pick out those little stories when maybe it's a hard day where you're like, man, like, this team's on a deep losing streak. Like, how am I going to find a story? When you develop that skill, that's when, even in those tough moments like that, where it's like, ooh, like, I don't even know what I'm going to say today, you're able to find a way. And those skills will stick with you no matter where you go, whether you're covering a big NFL team, whether you're in a top market. Those are the skills that you're always going to need. Storytelling always tops everything.
I love that piece of advice. Storytelling tops everything. I love that. That's a fantastic quote.
I'll always say too, this is the biggest thing. I fell in love with journalism in high school because my high school elective was called the Lion Report, and we did our own high school broadcast every day of the week. And I will never forget, I was a freshman, my first day of high school. I walked into that class and there was a big sign on the whiteboard that said, "Stories are told in this room. It's a privilege to be a storyteller." And I remember when I walked in my mind, I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, there's all these cameras, there's all these lights, like TV's cool. I wasn't even thinking about that TV is storytelling. I was just thinking about the visual aspect of it. And when my teacher explained that and just the privilege and opportunity we have to be able to hear these stories and tell them to the world, that's so special. It's a privilege to be a storyteller. Always remember that. Because I won't lie, there's hard days. There's days where you're so busy. There's days where maybe things don't go their way. Shoot, there's days where I really miss home and I'm like, what the heck did I do? Like, why am I doing this? But when you remember that you're a storyteller and people are trusting you and this is a privilege, that makes it all worth it.
Yeah. And my piece of advice would be like to say it's always worth it. You know, there's going to be moments where you're going to doubt yourself. There's going to be moments where like you feel like you just want to like just get out of journalism entirely. I mean, and you know, that's to be honest, there's moments where that happens. And I think the big thing is that whatever work that you put in, you will reap those rewards in this field. The more work that you put in journalism, the more work you put in, whether that's in producing, whether that's in sports reporting, whether that's in news, whatever production, you will reap those rewards because people see that, right? People will see that, managers see that, coworkers see that, whatever, etc. So you get out what you put in. And I would also say, like you said, it's a privilege to be able to tell stories. And so, you know, recognize that and see it. And of course, don't forget to always network, right? Networking, I think, is the big thing that got us so many different opportunities here. I just networked with somebody up at NBC News, like the actual NBC News, the one Lester Holt works at. Like, you know, like that's like the thing is like you need to be able to network with people because you never know what opportunities you're going to get from that. You know, these people have been through the block several times. They've seen everything. And so it's like the advice that they share to you, you're going to be able to use that in your career right now. And then also if they're going to see the work that you put in, and if they see the work that you put in, they'll get you an opportunity. You know, people want to help you succeed. That's the thing. Like, I feel like don't be afraid to ask for help. Like a lot of us, I think when you're young, you're kind of scared to almost ask for help because it's like you want to see if you could do it yourself. But like, that's the thing. Like, we're all here to help you. Like, if you just reach out to us and let us know what your intentions are, like, we'll do your best to help.
Definitely. I'm so glad you said that too, because that's the other thing. Sometimes it can be easy to feel alone in the newsroom. You know, everyone's sitting there, everyone's grinding, everyone's doing their thing. But ask for help even in your own newsroom. We're talking about the for lifers at our stations that have been there 30 plus years. They know things, you know, they've been doing this a while. They're really good at what they do. Sometimes, like I even ask about sports things. I'll ask our news anchors who aren't even, you know, covering sports every day, but they've been here to know when these big things happen. Like, hey, like, do you remember this? Like, what do you remember about this? But they give me those nuggets of information sometime that get you something bigger at the end. So at the end of the day, like, we're all a team, you know, like a newsroom is a team, even if you're individually working on your own story. So don't be afraid to ask for help, whether it's management, whether it's your coworkers and other people out there. Like, the TV community is special. The news community is special. Like, everyone wants to help each other out. Everyone's been in your shoes, whether you're people starting out just like us. The experienced veterans started like us too. So I always say too, the worst thing someone can do is say no, but you're not going to know. Like, the best thing they could do is say yes and give you some great advice and help you get to where you want to be, but you'll never know unless you ask. So.
Exactly. I think you said it. You left it well said. I'm just going to end it on that. Listeners, thanks for Amber. Thanks for coming on the podcast. Listeners, you can follow Amber on Instagram at Amber_Salas. Don't forget to follow her on Twitter at Amber Salas KTIV. Of course, reach out to her for any story ideas or anything like that or advice. You can also reach out to me. Don't forget to follow the podcast at On the Record Pod.
This is crazy because I remember when you first started On the Record, and it's so cool to see all that it's become, and it's super awesome. So I love it.
Yes, we're going on 3 years strong, which is crazy because I have not even thought about that. But yes, 3 years,
so 3 years strong.
Yes. Amber, thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.